Hello everyone, how's it going? In this video, we're going to look into Alibaba, and there are some huge, heavyweight super investors that are now getting involved with Baba. We have Greg Alexander, we have Guy Spier, Monish Pabrai, Lilu, and the most interesting of the trades, Charlie Munger. If you look into data Roma for Alibaba, you'll see all these super investors which are listed in the company. You have Greg Alexander, who has 20% of his portfolio, who more than doubled his position recently. You have Charlie Munger, who bought Baba back in Q1 of 2021. Back then, the price was more higher than what it is now. You have Monish Pabrai, who bought in Q1 of 2021, and he added more. Guy Spier, he also bought in Q2 of 2021. Let's look into all these super investors. So one, you have Greg Alexander. Warren Buffett mentioned that there were three people that he can trust his money with if he were to put his money in. One, Seth Klarman, two, Greg Alexander, and number three, Lee Lu. And Greg Alexander, he recently doubled his position in Baba, and right now it's sitting about 20 to 21% of his portfolio. That's a huge bet. And if you look at his portfolio, the top 4 or 5 companies comprise majority of his portfolio, and that is what we are looking for. Chris Meyer, in his book, The 100 Baggers, he went across and showed a few investors who were all these 100 bagger companies, looking into these companies. All of these investors were not diversified. They were concentrated into a particular group, and that's all they believed in. He looked up Monish Pabrai, he looked up Warren Buffett, and all these other bigger investors, and he showed that there was a common pattern. They were not diversified. Now that's with Guy Alexander. You have Guy Spier. Guy Spier is another gentleman in that same value investor group with Monish Pabrai, with Charlie Munger, everything. Now he has Baba recently added. And if you look into Guy Spier's portfolio in all these companies, you can look companies like Google, Alphabet, American Express, MasterCard. All of these are huge companies which have already made in the market. And that is the type of companies Guy Spier looks into. And he's someone who buys and holds forever. So he's basically looking for companies which have already made their mark, which have cut down the competition already, and they're right there on the top. So there's no competition. That way he doesn't have to worry about these companies, how far they're going to go, how far they're going to survive. These companies are out there already. And that is the type of companies he looks for. And for him to buy Alibaba, that's great. He doesn't do much of changes in his portfolios. There are very few activities that Guy Spier does in his aquamarine capital. Next, you have Monish Pabrai, who basically is very famous for cloning, and he bought Baba back in Q1 of 2021. Now, Q2 2021 is still left, and it's still basically expected to come out, whereas Guy Spier, this was from Q2 of 2021. Monish Pabrai's Q2 21 13F filings are still pending, but I believe he has added more, because in one of his lectures he did mention that that's a company that they're currently they don't want to talk about it because they're still adding into their portfolio. But only time will decide when we see the new 13F filings. The next interesting thing is Lee Lu. Lee Lu is someone who is known to manage money for Charlie Munger. He has a very interesting history, very massive, very inspiring story. And this is a gentleman who started off with investing his college fund, the float that he had for his college fund to invest. And by the time he graduated with multiple PhDs, he had 1 million in his hand, just using the loan money that he had for his college fund. He's someone to look into. Now, he had bought Alibaba back in Q1 of 2020, and then he sold in Q2 of 2020. So he sold everything, whatever he had, for Alibaba. And Lilo is someone who feels deeply about the Chinese stocks. You can see he has Pinduoduo and other companies. He also reduced the stake in Facebook, but this is a gentleman who has good insight into Chinese companies. And for him to sell, there's something definitely interesting to look into. But again, this is back in 2020. Next, you have Charlie Munger. And this is the most interesting trade of all, because Charlie Munger does not do much changes. He's not very active in buying and selling. He is very unreasonable and he makes his judgment. He has a set of principles and he doesn't move until all those principles were satisfied. And those principles are very unreasonable. For him to buy Alibaba, that tells something. There's a quick story on him. This is a company called Tenneco, and Charlie Munger bought it back in 2002, and within 3 years, it gave him. So he put down 10 million, and in 3 years, he made 80 million out of it. So about 7 to 8 times his money in 3 years. And the story behind that is Charlie Munger used to have this Barron's stock trip to his weekly newsletter. So he would get this newsletter every week where it had about 10 stock tips for that week. And Charlie Munger would go through all these 10 stock tips. And he did that for 50 years. Imagine 10 stock tips every week. And he's reading those stock tips every week for the past 50 years. And he does not act on any of those stock tips. He doesn't do anything. But in 2002, he looks into this company, finds it, he loves it, and he purchases it. Back then, it was going through a rough time, and it was selling less than the amount of cash it had. The market cap was very less. It was basically less than the amount of cash the company had on their balance sheet. He bought the company, and immediately it made 7 to 8 per times of his money. He then gave that money to Lilu, and who then made it to close to 10 times, which is right now sitting at about $500-600 million. So that 10 million which he initially invested in Tenneco became 80 million, and then he gave it to Lilu. Lilu made it to 500-600 million. So this is a gentleman who is known to have very less trades, who's very unreasonable in what he wants, and only buys when he's absolutely certain. And there's a huge bet that they make, basically. So it's definitely something interesting to look into. But again, yes, this could be a herd mentality where all these guys are cloning each other. If one is wrong, the whole thesis could be falling onto everything. So anything could happen. If the big guys are looking into it, it doesn't mean that everything is right. It's our responsibility to research into it, understand this on ourselves, and then make any decision that we want. But don't listen to anything. Do your own research before you try to do anything with this company. Just want to share this with you. With that, take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.